Amy Foster held the transfer papers in her hands and felt her heart sink. 3 years of good service on the CSS Horizon, and this was what she got. A posting to Station Kepler 9, babysitting alien kids while their parents did important work. It was the kind of job they gave to officers who had messed up badly or who nobody cared about anymore. She looked at herself in the mirror of her quarters. Brown hair tied back in a standard bun. Green eyes that had seen 26 years of life, 3 of them in space. Average height, average build, average everything. That was Amy's life in one word: average. She was ranked 97 out of 120 crew members on the Horizon. Not bad enough to get fired, not good enough to get noticed. Her academy classmate Patricia Moore was already a full lieutenant on a warship. Her roommate from basic training, Linda Hayes, commanded a survey team exploring new worlds. And Amy? Amy was being sent to watch children on a space station that most people had never heard of. The transport ship to Kepler 9 took 4 days. Amy spent most of that time reading everything she could find about her new assignment. The station was huge, built by a dozen different alien species working together. It housed the children of diplomats, military officers, and scientists while their parents did dangerous work. Humans ran a small section with 43 kids. That part didn't worry her. What worried her was the other part of her job. The part that made 3 officers quit in 2 months. 17 Kravix cubs. Amy pulled up files on the Kravix species. They were big, standing 8 feet tall when fully grown. They had claws that could cut through steel. Their teeth could crush bone. Their empire controlled 12 star systems, and they had a reputation as fierce warriors. They respected strength and despised weakness. Their culture was built around combat, honor, and proving yourself through action. And somehow, Amy was supposed to supervise their children. When the transport docked at Kepler 9, Amy grabbed her single bag of belongings and headed to the main office. The station director was a being called Vixthor, with 4 arms and skin that looked like blue leather. They seemed nervous when Amy walked in. "Lieutenant Foster," Vixthor said through a translation device that turned their clicks and whistles into standard English. "Welcome to Kepler 9. I want to be honest with you about the situation." Amy sat down. "I'm listening. The Kravix cubs are difficult. Very difficult. They fight each other constantly. They break equipment. They ignore safety rules. They have injured 2 supervisors badly enough to require medical evacuation." Vixthor's 4 hands moved in what might have been worry. "We've tried everything. Senior officers with combat experience, child psychology experts, even a Kravix civilian advisor. Nothing has worked." "So you're sending me," Amy said. "Rank 97, no special training. No combat decorations, why?" Vixthor looked uncomfortable. "Your species was rated as compatible. Humans are persistence predators with pack-bonding instincts. The Kravix parents agreed to try 1 more human supervisor. If this doesn't work, they will remove their cubs from the station entirely. That would be a diplomatic disaster." Amy felt the weight of that responsibility settle on her shoulders. "When do I start?" "Tomorrow morning." "I suggest you rest tonight." "You'll need it." Amy didn't sleep well. She kept thinking about 8-foot-tall warriors and their children who had sent trained combat officers running. What chance did she have? She was nobody special. Just another middle-rank officer who had never done anything remarkable in her entire career. But in the morning, she put on her uniform, checked her appearance one last time, and headed to the Kravix youth section of the station. The doors were reinforced metal, twice as thick as normal. She could hear roaring and crashes from inside. She took a deep breath and walked through. 17 pairs of golden eyes locked onto her immediately. The cubs ranged in size from about 4 feet tall to over 6 feet. The smallest looked like they might be 5 years old in human terms. The largest were teenagers already showing the muscle and claws that would make them dangerous adults. The room fell silent. The cubs stared at her. Amy stared back. A large male cub stepped forward. He was nearly 6 feet tall with dark gray fur and scars on his arms from fighting. His file name was Kraxic, age 12. He was the leader of the group, the one the others followed. "Another human," Kraxic said in rough standard English. His voice was deep and growling. "You won't last 3 days. The last one ran away crying." Amy met his eyes and didn't look away. In human culture, staring could be rude, but she had read that Kraxic saw looking away as weakness. If she showed fear now, she was done. "My name is Lieutenant Amy Foster," she said clearly. "I'm not here to last 3 days or 3 weeks. I'm here to do my job. That job is keeping you cubs safe and making sure you learn something useful while your parents are deployed. She used the word cubs deliberately. It was what adult Kravix called their young, sometimes with affection and sometimes with mild insult. Several of the cubs growled at hearing it from a human. Kraksik took a step closer. He was trying to intimidate her. And what if we don't want to be kept safe? What if we don't want to learn from a weak human? Amy stood her ground. She was barely 5 feet 6 inches tall. This cub towered over her. His claws were longer than her fingers. He could hurt her badly if he wanted to, but she didn't back up. Then you'll learn something else, Amy said calmly. You'll learn why humans survived on a planet full of things bigger and stronger than us. We're not the fastest, we're not the strongest, but we don't give up ever, and I promise you, cubs, I can be more stubborn than you can be aggressive. Kraksik's lips pulled back, showing fangs. It might have been a smile or a threat. Hard to tell. Prove it, I will, Amy said. Starting now. Here are the rules. Rule 1, you follow all safety protocols. No exceptions. This station is in space. One mistake can kill everyone. Rule 2, fighting is allowed only in the designated combat area with safety gear and with supervision. Rule 3, you treat this space and the people in it with respect. That includes your fellow cubs and the human children in the other section. A smaller female cub in the back made a barking sound. The translator rendered it as laughter. She doesn't smell afraid, the cub said. Her name was Zixara, according to Amy's quick mental check of the files. Interesting. Kraksik hadn't moved. He was still staring at Amy, still trying to make her back down. And if we break your rules, then there will be consequences, Amy said. Appropriate to what you did wrong, but fair. Always fair. What kind of consequences? Another cub asked. That depends on what you do, Amy replied. Break equipment, you help fix it. Start a fight outside the combat area, you lose privileges. Endanger someone's safety, you get confined to quarters. Simple. Kraksik finally stepped back. He hadn't won the staring contest, and the other cubs noticed. We'll see how long you last, human. Yes, we will, Amy agreed. The first day was chaos. The cubs tested every boundary. They accidentally broke a chair. They started 3 separate fights. They refused to attend their scheduled educational sessions. One of them tried to climb out an airlock just to see if Amy would stop them. She did, calmly triggering the safety lockdown and then explaining to the cub exactly how they would have died in vacuum. By the evening, Amy was exhausted. Her body ached from staying alert for 12 hours straight. Her voice was hoarse from talking firmly but calmly through crisis after crisis. She returned to her quarters and collapsed on her bunk. This was impossible. These cubs didn't respect her. Why would they? She was ranked 97, she had no special qualifications. She was just average Amy Foster, who had never been remarkable at anything in her life. But as she lay there, she thought about something her instructor at the academy had said years ago. Leadership isn't about being the strongest or the smartest. It's about showing up every day and doing what needs to be done, even when it's hard. Amy had spent 3 years being average, 3 years doing her job adequately but never standing out. Maybe that was exactly what these cubs needed. Not someone trying to prove how tough they were. Not someone trying to dominate them. Just someone who showed up and did the work. She would be back tomorrow. And the day after that, and the day after that, because that was what humans did. They persisted. In the Kravix youth quarters, Zixara watched the door where the human had left. What do you think? She asked Kraksik. The large cub was quiet for a moment. She didn't run. She didn't try to hurt us. She just stood there. Is that strength or stupidity? Another cub asked. Kraksik's ears flicked thoughtfully. I don't know yet, but I want to find out. The second day started the same as the first. Amy walked into the Kravix quarters and faced 17 pairs of eyes watching her every move. She had barely slept, going over files and cultural information about the Kravix until midnight. If she was going to survive this, she needed to understand how these cubs thought. Kraksik was waiting by the door. Back again, human? I thought you might have requested a transfer. I don't quit, Amy said simply. She walked past him to the center of the room. Today we're doing safety drills. Everyone needs to know how to use the emergency evacuation pods. Groans came from several cubs. We already know this, one complained. Then it will be easy for you, Amy replied. She led them to the emergency section where 6 pods sat in their docking stations. These were small ships designed to get people away from the station if something went catastrophically wrong. Every resident of Kepler 9 was required to know how to use them. Amy demonstrated the correct procedure. How to open the pod, how to strap in, how to activate the launch sequence. It was basic information, but critical. In an emergency, panic could kill faster than any actual danger. Now you try, she said to the group, one at a time. Show me you can do it correctly. Most of the cubs went through the drill properly, though some grumbled about it. Then it was Craxic's turn. The large cub walked up to the pod, looked at it, then looked at Amy. I think I'll do it my way, he said. Instead of entering through the door, he began climbing up the outside of the pod. Amy watched him for a moment. This was a test. The other cubs were watching to see what she would do. Would she yell? Would she back down? Would she try to physically pull him off? She did none of those things. Instead, she walked calmly to the control panel next to the pod. Craxic, you have 10 seconds to climb down and enter the pod correctly. Or what? He called from the top of the pod, his claws gripping the smooth metal surface. Or I activate the exterior magnetic seal, Amy said. Her hand moved toward the control panel. The pods are designed to seal completely in emergencies. If I activate that seal right now, your claws will be stuck to the hull. You'll hang there until I decide to release you. That could be 5 minutes. That could be an hour. Craxic stopped moving. You're bluffing, am I? Amy's finger was 1 inch from the button. 5 seconds. The cub looked down at her. She looked back up at him. Her expression was calm, almost bored. He couldn't tell if she was serious or not. 3 seconds. Craxic jumped down from the pod, landing with a heavy thud. Several of the other cubs made barking sounds that might have been laughter. He had backed down. He had blinked first. Good choice, Amy said. Now do it correctly. Craxic went through the proper procedure, though he clearly wasn't happy about it. When all the cubs had completed the drill, Amy dismissed them to their free time. As they filed out, Zixara hung back. Would you really have trapped him? The young female asked. Amy looked at her. What do you think? Zixara's ears flicked, and what Amy was learning meant approval. I think you would have. You don't bluff. You state facts. Your species respects that, right? Amy asked. Clear statements. Following through on what you say. Yes, Zixara said. The others are starting to see it too. You're not like the supervisors before. They either feared us or tried to dominate us with force. You do neither. I'm just doing my job, Amy said. That's why it works, Zixara replied. Over the next few weeks, a pattern emerged. The cubs would test Amy in different ways. They would break rules, start conflicts, or simply refuse to cooperate. Each time, Amy would respond the same way. She would state the rule clearly, explain why it existed, and enforce consequences if they broke it. She never yelled. She never hit. She never backed down. When 2 cubs got into a serious fight over territory in their sleeping area, Amy made them sit down and explain their grievances. Then she had them work together to find a solution. It took 3 hours of mediation, but eventually they agreed on a boundary system that both could accept. When a cub named Drixon deliberately broke a view screen during a tantrum, Amy handed him a repair kit and sat with him while he fixed it. It took the young cub 4 hours to complete the repair, and his hands were sore afterward. But he never broke anything on purpose again. When the cubs refused to complete their educational modules about alien species and cultures, Amy sat down with them and worked through every single lesson. She didn't force them. She just sat there hour after hour, patiently explaining concepts and answering questions. Eventually, they started participating just to make the time go faster. But the real change came in the 3rd week. It was the middle of the night cycle when the emergency alarm went off in Amy's quarters. She was awake and running in seconds, pulling on her uniform as she raced toward the Kravik section. Her communicator was buzzing with panicked messages. One of the younger cubs, 7-year-old Drixon, was having trouble breathing. Kraviks were prone to respiratory infections in artificial atmospheres, and this one had hit fast and hard. By the time Amy reached the quarters, the cub was gasping, his lips turning blue. Medical team is 20 minutes out, one of the older cubs said. There was real fear in his voice. He might not have 20 minutes. Amy didn't hesitate. The medical bay was on the other side of the station, nearly a kilometer away. Drixon weighed about 60 pounds, half of Amy's own body weight. She was not a large woman, and carrying that much weight that far would be brutal. She picked up the cub anyway. Craxic, Clear the path ahead of me, she ordered. Zixara, contact medical and tell them we're coming to them. The rest of you stay here and stay calm. Then she ran. Amy ran through corridors that seemed endless. Her arms burned. Her legs screamed. Her lungs felt like they were on fire. Drixon was getting heavier with every step, his breathing getting more labored. She wanted to stop. She needed to stop. Her body was begging her to stop. She didn't stop. Kraxic ran ahead, warning other station residents to clear the way. Zixara kept pace beside her, talking on the communicator. But Amy just focused on putting one foot in front of the other. Run, don't stop. Keep going. The cub needed her. They reached the medical bay in under 6 minutes. The medical team was waiting and immediately took Drixon. Amy collapsed against a wall, gasping for breath. Her legs were shaking. Her arms felt like rubber. She had pushed her body past what she thought she could do. The doctor, a human named Greg Morrison, came out 30 minutes later. He's going to be fine. You got him here in time. 5 more minutes and it would have been bad. Amy nodded, still trying to catch her breath. That was quite a run, the doctor said. Most people couldn't carry that much weight that far that fast. Had to, Amy managed to say. Kraxic and Zixara were waiting in the corridor. When Amy emerged, they both looked at her differently. There was something new in their eyes. Something like respect. You carried him, Kraxic said quietly. You're half his size and you carried him all that way. He needed help, Amy said. What else was I going to do? The two cubs exchanged a look. Then Kraxic did something Amy hadn't seen before. He pressed his forehead against her shoulder, a gesture of deep respect in Kravic's culture. You protected the pack, he said. When one of us was weak, you were strong. That is what a true leader does. Word spread fast among the cubs. By the time Amy returned to duty the next day after a mandatory rest period, something had changed. The cubs still tested boundaries. They still fought and argued and caused problems. But they stopped testing her. When Amy gave an order, they followed it. When she set a rule, they respected it. When she entered a room, they stopped what they were doing and paid attention. Drixon recovered fully and returned to the quarters 2 days later. The young cub went straight to Amy and pressed his forehead against her arm. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. That evening, Zixara found Amy in the observation deck looking out at the stars. The others are calling you Commander now, the young female said. Amy turned to her in surprise. That's not my rank. I'm just a lieutenant. Commander is not just a rank to us, Zixara explained. It's a title of respect. It means someone who leads through actions, not just words. Someone who protects the pack, even at cost to themselves. She paused. You've earned it. All of us agree. Amy felt something tight in her chest. She had been ranked 97 for so long. Average, forgettable, nobody special. But these cubs, these fierce predator cubs who respected only strength and courage, were calling her commander. I just did what was necessary, Amy said. Exactly, Zixara replied. That's why you've earned it. 3 months had passed since Amy first walked into the Kravic's quarters. The cubs still fought among themselves sometimes, but it was controlled now. They followed safety rules. They completed their educational requirements. They had even started helping maintain their living area without being asked. Station Director Vixthor had stopped sending worried messages every other day. Amy was reviewing educational reports when her communicator buzzed. It was Vixthor, and the director sounded stressed. Lieutenant Foster, I need you in my office immediately. We have a situation. When Amy arrived, she found Vixthor pacing with all 4 arms moving in agitation. We have a diplomatic problem. A Soltari vessel is docking tomorrow. They're bringing 15 juveniles who will stay here during negotiations between their species and the Kravic's empire. Amy felt her stomach drop. She knew about the current tensions. The Kravic's and Soltari were in a cold standoff over a disputed system. Both sides were posturing, making threats showing military strength. It hadn't turned into actual combat yet, but everyone was nervous. The Soltari requested this meeting? Amy asked. Yes. They want their young safe during the talks, just like the Kravic's do. It makes sense. Vixthor stopped pacing and looked at Amy. But I need you to make sure your cubs don't cause an incident. The Soltari and Kravic's have very different cultures. If there's fighting between the young, it could derail the entire negotiation. I'll talk to them, Amy promised. That evening, she gathered all 17 cubs in their common area. They sensed something was wrong immediately. Kraviks were good at reading body language and tension. "We have new residents arriving tomorrow," Amy said. "Soltari juveniles, 15 of them." The reaction was immediate. Several cubs growled. Others bared their teeth. Kraksik, who had grown another 6 inches over the past months, looked angry. "The Soltari call us primitives," he said. "They say our warrior culture is barbaric. They think they're better than us because they think as a group mind." Amy had researched the Soltari. They were a crystalline species that lived in mental collectives. Their young formed hive minds during development, thinking and acting as one organism. They valued consensus and cooperation above everything else. To them, the Kraviks' focus on individual combat and personal honor seemed savage. "They do think that," Amy agreed. "Just like many species think humans are weak because we don't have claws or natural weapons. But we know that's not the whole truth, don't we?" Sixara tilted her head thoughtfully. "You want us to ignore their insults? To show weakness?" "No," Amy said firmly. "I want you to show them that Kravik's cubs can demonstrate something they think you're incapable of: restraint and tactical thinking. Any fool can start a fight. It takes real strength to choose not to fight when you could." "But if they challenge us?" Kraksik asked. "Then you come to me first," Amy said. "Before any claws come out, before any insults are returned, you come to me." "That's an order." The cubs grumbled, but they agreed. They had learned that when Amy gave an order, she had a good reason for it. The Soltari juveniles arrived the next day. They moved through the station in a tight group, perfectly synchronized. When one turned their head, they all turned. When one spoke, they all spoke in the same rhythm. It was unsettling to watch, even for Amy. The leader of the Soltari collective was called Cluster Prime 7. They approached Amy with their group behind them, moving as one unit. "You are the supervisor of the Kraviks, young ones. We have heard reports. They are wild, dangerous, uncivilized." Amy kept her face neutral. "They are cubs learning to control their instincts. Just like your juveniles are learning to merge their minds into a collective. We're all here to grow and develop." "We do not fight," Cluster Prime 7 said. "We think together, act together, solve problems together. The Kravik's way is chaos." "Different doesn't mean wrong," Amy replied. "Your species and theirs have different strengths. Maybe you'll learn something from each other." The Soltari collective made a sound like chiming crystal. It might have been laughter or dismissal. "We doubt there is anything to learn from those who value individual violence over group harmony." The first few days were tense. The Soltari juveniles and Kravik's cubs avoided each other mostly, but there were small incidents. The Soltari would block corridors when cubs needed to pass, forcing them to ask permission to get through. They made comments in standard English just loud enough to be heard about the primitive ones and the violent species. Amy watched her cubs carefully. She could see them struggling. Kraksik's claws extended and retracted constantly. Sixara's ears were always flat against her head, a sign of suppressed aggression. The younger cubs looked to the older ones for guidance on how to respond, but they kept their promise. They came to Amy instead of fighting back. She was proud of them for that, even as she felt angry at the Soltari's deliberate provocations. The crisis came during a station-wide educational exercise. All the young residents were supposed to work together to solve a complex problem. A section of the station had simulated damage, and they needed to reroute power while following safety protocols. It required multiple teams working on different aspects of the problem simultaneously. The Soltari collective immediately began working together with perfect coordination. They didn't need to discuss or plan. They simply acted as one, each juvenile knowing exactly what the others were thinking and doing. The Kravik's cubs, used to competing with each other for dominance and glory, struggled. They argued over who should lead. They competed to solve parts of the problem individually rather than as a group. They were making mistakes and falling behind. Cluster Prime 7 made sure everyone could hear their assessment. As expected, the individualistic species fails at cooperation. They cannot work together because they value personal achievement over group success. This is why the Soltari will always be superior to the Kraviks. Amy saw Kraksik's whole body tense. The large cub took a step toward the Soltari collective. His claws were fully extended. He was going to attack. Diplomatic consequences be damned. Amy caught his eye and shook her head slightly. Then she walked over to where her cubs were working, deliberately placing herself between them and the Soltari. "Listen to me," she said quietly, so only her cubs could hear. Kravix hunt in packs, correct? Your parents coordinate attacks on dangerous prey. They don't think the same thoughts, but they know how to use each individual's strengths. Zixara understood first. Her eyes brightened. We don't need to think alike. We need to think about how we're different and use that. Exactly, Amy said. The Soltari are showing you their method of cooperation. Now show them yours. The cubs looked at each other. Then Zixara began organizing them. Kraxik, Torm, and Vix, you're the strongest. You handle moving the heavy power relays. Drixon, Zara, and Kel, you're the fastest. You run messages between the teams. The rest of us will work on the calculations and planning. It wasn't perfect coordination like the Soltari hive mind. There were still arguments and disagreements. But they were working together now, each cub doing what they were best at, compensating for each other's weaknesses. Within 20 minutes, they had not only completed their section of the exercise, but had done it faster than the Soltari collective. More importantly, they had done it while maintaining their individual identities and voices. Several other species groups were still struggling. Without being asked, the Kravix cubs split up and went to help them. Amy watched with quiet pride as Kraxik patiently explained a concept to a nervous Quellan juvenile, using gentleness she didn't know he possessed. The exercise ended with all groups successful. Station Director Vixthor congratulated everyone on their cooperation. But Amy noticed something interesting. Cluster Prime 7's crystalline structure was flickering in patterns that the cultural database said indicated confusion and recalculation. That evening, 3 members of the Soltari collective separated from the main group and approached the Kravix quarters. This was unusual. Soltari juveniles rarely broke from their collective mind except in private. Zixara was the one who greeted them at the door. You want something? We observed you today, the 3 Soltari said in perfect unison. You worked together while remaining individuals. We did not think this was possible. Our adults told us that species who value individualism cannot truly cooperate. Your adults were wrong, Zixara said bluntly. We can cooperate. We just do it differently than you. This confuses us, the Soltari admitted. We wish to understand. How do you maintain individual thought while still acting as a unified group? Kraxik stepped forward. We don't all think the same thing, but we all think about the same goal. We know each other's strengths and weaknesses. We trust each other to do their part. The conversation continued for over an hour. Other cubs joined in, explaining their perspective. The Soltari juveniles listened with genuine interest, their earlier contempt replaced by curiosity. They didn't become friends exactly, but they reached an understanding. Later that night, Kraxik found Amy in the observation deck. The huge cub sat down beside her, looking out at the stars. We almost failed today, he said quietly. We were so busy trying to prove ourselves individually that we forgot how to work as a pack. You reminded us. You figured it out yourselves, Amy said. I just pointed you in the right direction. The Soltari were wrong about us, Kraxik said. But we were also wrong about 6 months into her assignment. Amy had established a routine that actually worked. The Kravix cubs respected her. The Soltari juveniles had stopped their provocations. Even the human children in her care had started looking up to her as someone who could handle any crisis. Station Kepler 9 was running more smoothly than it had in over a year. Then everything changed in a single morning. Amy was having breakfast with Zixara and Kraxik, discussing their upcoming proficiency tests, when the emergency alert system blared through the station. Every screen switched to the same message. Priority distress signal. Station Director Vixthor's face appeared on the monitors, all 4 of their arms moving in visible distress. All military personnel report to the command center immediately. This is not a drill, Amy ran. The command center was on the upper level of the station, normally restricted to senior staff. When she arrived, she found herself in a room with officers from 6 different species, all of them higher ranking than her. Admiral Kel Shax, the station commander, stood at the center console displaying a star map. The CSS Endeavour, a human colony ship, has suffered catastrophic systems failure, the admiral said without preamble. They have 200 people aboard, including 60 children. Their life support is failing. They have 72 hours, maybe less, before carbon dioxide buildup becomes lethal. Amy felt her blood run cold. 200 people. 60 children, a Quellan captain spoke up. We have 6 rescue vessels en route. The nearest will arrive in 80 hours. That's 8 hours too late. What about military ships in the area? Another officer asked. The admiral's expression was grim. The only ship close enough is the Kravik's military vessel Talon of Wrath. They're on patrol just 8 hours from the Endeavor's position, but they have refused our request for assistance. Refused? Amy heard herself say. There are children dying and they refused? The admiral looked at her. The Kravik's empire is currently in a standoff with the Soltari collective. They don't want to appear weak or distracted by diverting military assets for humanitarian rescue. They say it's not their responsibility. Amy thought about the 17 cubs in her care. She thought about their parents, warriors, and officers in the Kravik's military, who had trusted her with their most precious young. She thought about what those cubs had learned over the past 6 months about honor and strength and doing what was right even when it was hard. Sir, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, I request permission to contact the Talon of Wrath directly. The room went silent. Every officer turned to look at her. Admiral Kelshax's 4 eyes widened. Lieutenant Foster, you are rank 97. You have no authority to conduct military diplomacy. This is far above your clearance level. I'm not asking to conduct diplomacy, Amy said. I'm asking to speak to them as someone who has spent 6 months earning the respect of their cubs. Someone who has taught those cubs about real honor. The admiral studied her for a long moment. Then they nodded slowly. You have 5 minutes. If you can convince them, do it. But understand that if this fails, there will be consequences for overstepping your authority. I understand, sir. Amy returned to the Kravik's quarters. The cubs were gathered around their own view screen, watching news coverage of the Endeavor crisis. They looked up when she entered, and she saw genuine worry in their faces. They had lived alongside human children for months. They understood what was at stake. Commander, Kraxik said, using the title they had all adopted. Your people are in danger. Yes, Amy said, and I need your help. Which of you has parents serving on the Talon of Wrath? 3 cubs stepped forward. Zixara was one of them. My mother is the ship's second in command, the young female said quietly. I need to speak to them, Amy said. I need to tell them what you've learned here. I need to remind them what honor really means. 15 minutes later, Amy stood in front of a communication screen with all 17 cubs arranged behind her. On the screen was Commander Zixana, Zixara's mother, a formidable Kravik's warrior with battle scars on her arms and a gaze that could probably cut through steel. Lieutenant Foster, Commander Zixana said, her voice carefully neutral. My daughter tells me you wish to speak about the human colony ship. The Talon of Wrath has its orders. We are on patrol in a contested region. We cannot be diverted for humanitarian missions that are not our responsibility. Amy took a deep breath. Commander, I'm not going to appeal to treaties or diplomatic agreements. I'm not going to argue about responsibility or obligation. I'm going to tell you about your cubs. Zixana's ears flicked with interest. What about them? For 6 months, I've had the honor of supervising 17 Kravik's cubs. Your daughter and 16 others. They came to me with a reputation. Violent. Uncontrollable. They had driven away 3 supervisors. Nobody wanted to deal with them, Amy paused. Do you know what I discovered? Tell me. They're not violent. They're passionate. They're not uncontrollable. They're testing to see if you're worthy of following. And once you prove you are, they're the most loyal, courageous, honorable young beings I've ever known. Amy gestured to the cubs behind her. These cubs have taught me what real Kravik's honor looks like. It's not about being the strongest or winning every fight. It's about protecting those who need protection. It's about doing what's right even when it's difficult or dangerous. It's about choosing courage over comfort. She locked eyes with Commander Zixana through the screen. Right now, 60 human children are going to die if someone doesn't help them. Not because of war or conflict or politics, just because a machine broke and nobody with the power to help is willing to do so. Zixara stepped forward then, standing beside Amy. Mother, when Drixon couldn't breathe, Commander Foster carried him almost a kilometer to the medical bay. She didn't stop to think about whether it was her responsibility. She didn't calculate the political cost. She saw someone who needed help and she helped them. That's what you taught me honor means. One by one, the other cubs whose parents served on the Talon of Wrath stepped forward. Each one spoke. Father, Commander Foster has shown us that true warriors protect the weak, not ignore them. Mother, you always said that honor is doing what's right when no one is watching. Everyone is watching now. Parent Prime, we learned from you that Kravik's strength means protecting the pack. Those children are someone's pack. Commander Zixana was silent for a long moment. Her expression was unreadable. Finally, she spoke. Lieutenant Foster, you are rank 97. You have no authority to make this request. You have no right to use our cubs to pressure military decisions. You have no standing to lecture me about honor. Amy felt her heart sink. She had failed. Those children would die, and she had failed to save them. But then Zixana continued. However, my daughter is right. These cubs have learned something important from you. They've learned that true leadership means making hard choices. They've learned that honor isn't about following orders blindly. It's about knowing when orders conflict with what's right. The commander stood taller on the screen. You say you are rank 97 as if that matters. My daughter tells me the cubs call you commander. Do you know why that title matters to us? It's not about position. It's about proving through actions that you are worthy of being followed. Zixana's expression shifted into something that might have been respect. You just did something incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. You risked your career, your reputation, and your future to try to save people you don't know. You used every resource you had, including appealing to the honor of cubs because you believed it was right. She paused. That is what a true commander does. The Talon of Wrath is adjusting course. We will reach the colony ship in 8 hours. Those children will not die today. The transmission ended. Amy stood frozen, not quite believing what had just happened. Behind her, the cubs erupted into roars of celebration. Kraxik pressed his forehead against her shoulder, the highest gesture of respect his species had. You did it, Commander, he said. You saved them. We did it, Amy corrected. I couldn't have convinced them without all of you. Without what you've learned. Without the courage you showed by speaking to your parents about honor. Over the next hours, news spread through the station. The Talon of Wrath reached the Endeavor with time to spare. Their engineering teams worked alongside the human crew to restore life support. Every single person aboard the colony ship survived. Amy received a message from the colony ship's captain. I don't know what you did or how you convinced the Kraviks to help us, but you saved my crew. You saved my daughter. Thank you. But she also received a summons to Admiral Kelshax's office. She went expecting punishment for overstepping her authority. Instead, she found the Admiral sitting with Commander Zixana, who had transported to the station. Lieutenant Foster, the Admiral began. You put me in a difficult position. By all protocols, you violated chain of command. You conducted unauthorized diplomatic contact. You used civilians under your care to pressure a foreign military. I understand, sir, Amy said quietly. I take full responsibility. However, Admiral Kelshax continued, you also saved 200 lives by doing so. More importantly, you demonstrated something that many senior officers never learn. That leadership is. The day after the Endeavor rescue, Amy woke up to find her life had completely changed. Her communicator was full of messages. News outlets wanted interviews. The Galactic Council wanted reports. Other stations wanted to know how she had managed to turn the notoriously difficult Kravik's cubs into a functional group. But the most surprising message came from Admiral Kelshax. Lieutenant Foster, report to my office at 0900 hours. Commander Zixana will also be present. Amy dressed carefully in her best uniform. This was it. They were probably going to officially reprimand her for overstepping her authority, even if they couldn't deny that it had worked. She looked at herself in the mirror. Same brown hair, same green eyes, same average everything. Except she didn't feel average anymore. When she arrived at the Admiral's office, she found not just Kelshax and Zixana, but also Station Director Vixthor and 3 other senior officers she didn't recognize. This was more serious than she had thought. Lieutenant Foster, Admiral Kelshax began formally. Please sit down. Amy sat, her back straight, ready to accept whatever consequences came. The events of yesterday have been reviewed by multiple authorities, the Admiral continued. Your actions were highly irregular. You violated protocol in several ways. You conducted unauthorized diplomatic contact. You used your position as supervisor to influence military decisions. Amy nodded. Yes, sir. I understand. However, Commander Zixana interjected, you also demonstrated qualities that are rare among officers of any species or rank. You showed moral courage. You found a solution when those with more experience and higher rank had given up. You understood that sometimes rules must bend to serve a greater purpose. Vixthor spoke next, their forearms gesturing expressively. Lieutenant Foster, Do you know what happened after word of the rescue spread? I received communications from 11 other stations asking about your methods. 4 different species have requested human supervisors for their youth programs, specifically citing your success with the Kravix cubs as proof of human capability. One of the officers Amy didn't recognize leaned forward. She wore the insignia of the Galactic Council. Lieutenant, I am Coordinator Ellis from the Council's Education and Integration Department. We've been trying to establish effective multi-species youth programs for 5 years. Most have failed. Children from different species fight, their cultures clash, and supervisors give up. You've done in 6 months what we couldn't do in 5 years. Amy wasn't sure what to say. I just treated them with respect and consistency. That's exactly the point, Coordinator Ellis said. You saw them as individuals who needed guidance, not as problems to be managed. You learned their culture instead of trying to force them to adapt to yours. You led through example rather than through authority. Admiral Kelshax pulled up a document on the desk display. Lieutenant Foster, I am promoting you to full lieutenant effective immediately. I am also assigning you a new position as director of the Multi-Species Youth Integration Program. You will be responsible for coordinating similar efforts across 12 stations in this sector. Amy's mind went blank. Sir, I don't understand. I'm just ranked 97. I've never done anything remarkable before this assignment. You were ranked 97, the Admiral corrected. And you've done something very remarkable. You changed the paradigm. Everyone else was asking how to control different species. You asked how to learn from them. That perspective is exactly what we need. Commander Zixana stood. The Kravix Empire is formally requesting that you remain as liaison to our forces. We want you to help train our young officers in the methods you've developed. We also want you to continue supervising cubs whose parents are deployed. You've earned our trust, and that is not easily given to outsiders. The meeting continued for another hour, discussing details of Amy's new position, her expanded responsibilities, her increased clearance level. When it finally ended and everyone else had left, Admiral Kelshax asked Amy to stay. You look overwhelmed, the Admiral observed. I am, sir, Amy admitted. 6 months ago I was nobody, average at everything, going nowhere in my career. Now this, you were never nobody, Kelshax said gently. You were someone who hadn't found the right place to show what you could do. The military is good at recognizing traditional excellence, combat skills, tactical thinking, technical expertise, but it's not always good at recognizing other kinds of strength. The Admiral stood and walked to the window overlooking the station. Leadership isn't about being the strongest or the smartest or the most decorated. It's about understanding people, about persistence, about doing what's right even when it's hard. You have those qualities. You always did. You just needed a situation that required them. Amy thought about the past 6 months, the challenges, the tests. The moment she carried Drixon through the station while her body screamed at her to stop. The stand she took against Commander Zixana to save the Endeavor. None of it had felt like leadership at the time. It had just felt like doing what needed to be done. Thank you, sir, she said quietly. Don't thank me, Kelshax replied. Prove that this faith is justified. Go do great things, Lieutenant Foster. When Amy returned to the Kravix quarters, she found all 17 cubs waiting for her. They stood at attention, a formal military posture that they had clearly been practicing. Kraxik stepped forward, now standing nearly 7 feet tall and showing the beginning of adult musculature. Commander Foster, he said formally, we heard about your promotion. We wanted to be the first to congratulate you properly. Then all 17 cubs did something Amy had never seen. They pressed their foreheads against the ground in a gesture of ultimate respect in Kravix culture. This was reserved for legendary warriors and leaders of great accomplishment. Stop. Please stand up, Amy said, feeling her throat tighten with emotion. You don't need to do that. Yes, we do, Zixara said, rising. You were ranked 97 when you came to us. Nobody expected anything from you, including probably yourself. But you taught us something important. What's that? Amy asked. That rank doesn't define worth, Kraxik said. You showed us that a leader isn't the biggest or the strongest or the one with the most impressive title. A leader is someone who shows up every day and does what needs to be done. Someone who protects their pack. Someone who makes hard choices when everyone else gives up. Drixon, who had grown from a small cub into a gangly adolescent, added, You saved my life when I couldn't breathe. You saved those humans on the Endeavor when nobody else would. You teach us every day even when we make it difficult. That's what a real commander does. Amy felt tears starting in her eyes. She blinked them back. You cubs have taught me just as much as I've taught you. You've shown me that being different doesn't mean being less. You've shown me courage and honor and loyalty. I came here thinking I was going to supervise you. Instead, you made me a better leader. Over the next weeks, Amy began her transition to the new role. She would still supervise the original 17 cubs, but now she was also training other officers in her methods. She visited other stations, assessed their youth programs, and helped implement changes. She received a message from Patricia Moore, her old academy classmate who was now a lieutenant commander on a warship. Amy, I heard about your promotion and new assignment. I can't believe you're in charge of a multi-station program now. That's incredible. I always knew you had it in you. Amy smiled at the message, but she didn't quite believe it. Patricia had never paid much attention to average Amy Foster before, but that was okay. Amy had learned something important over the past 6 months. She didn't need other people to recognize her worth. She knew it herself now. The cubs threw her a ceremony before she moved to her new quarters in the administrative section. They had prepared speeches and gifts. Zixara presented her with a small carved crystal, a Kravix honor token that had belonged to the young cub's great-grandmother. This is too valuable, Amy protested. I can't accept this. You must, Zixara insisted. My mother says you've earned it. This token belonged to a pack leader who united 3 clans during the border wars. She led through wisdom and courage, not through force. My mother says you remind her of that ancestor. Amy accepted the crystal with shaking hands, understanding the weight of such a gift. In Kravix culture, family honor tokens were sacred. They were never given to outsiders, never given lightly. That night, Amy stood in her new quarters looking out at the stars. The crystal sat on her desk, catching the light and throwing prismatic patterns across the walls. She thought about her journey. From rank 97 going nowhere, assigned to a posting nobody wanted, to this, director of an important program, respected by multiple species, trusted with responsibilities that went far beyond her experience. Her communicator buzzed. It was a message from Kraxik. Commander, I have been accepted into the Kravix Imperial Academy. I will train to be an officer like my father. When I lead my first patrol, I will remember everything you taught us, that protecting others is the highest form of strength, that honor means doing what's right even when it's hard, that real leaders lift others up instead of pushing them down. Thank you for showing a group of difficult cubs what real leadership looks like. Amy read the message 3 times, feeling pride swell in her chest. These